The foreign ministers of Ireland, Poland, Hungary, and Serbia visited China from May 29th through 31st at the invitation of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi to discuss China-Europe relations and how to deepen cooperation. Although trade has been booming between China and Europe, political tensions are also emerging over human rights and a major investment treaty the European Parliament froze last month. What do the visits mean for China-EU relations at large? Joining me in Beijing is Cui Hongjian, Director of the China Institute of International Studies, and later on from Edinburgh, Scotland, Alistair Michie, Chairman of the International Board at Centre for China and Globalization. Gentlemen, welcome. Director Cui, let me go to you first. Ireland, Poland, Hungary, and Serbia. Why these four countries?
I think this time that we need to understand the background of the International Big Data Expo held in Cui Hongjian, the city of China. I think it's a very important background. I think these ministers, they do have a very big interest to be part of this expo. Of course, at the same time, if we look at the four countries, we can find that some member states of the European Union and some non-member states. And also, they do have very, good representativeness of all of the European countries. And also, all of the four countries, they do have very good cooperation, not only in the past, and also especially during the, COVID-19. And China had a very good collaboration on all of these issues. So I think the good relations and very good cooperation, and also especially some more consensus on a lot of issues will be very important background for why it's these four countries.
Alistair, if you look at these four countries, some countries enjoyed a solid, friendly relationship with China for a number of years, such as Serbia, Hungary, if you look at it to some extent. But also China and Ireland have a more, let's say, complex relationship. What do you think have been achieved during the meetings between the foreign ministers of these four countries and China?
Well, I can't tell you exactly what happened in those meetings because I'm sitting here in Edinburgh, but I think what's very important and significant is it's symbolic that China is reaching out to European countries to dialogue. And dialogue is critical at the moment because we have a lot of tension in the world, particularly tension between the US and China. And then lately there has been tension between the EU and China. It is hugely important to have dialogue because dialogue is the only way we're going to move forward and tackle the very, very serious issues facing the world. Far too much of the daily media debate is focused on small issues like what you raised. Why four foreign ministers from EU meet with Wang Yi. What's really more important is to ask the questions, how are the world's countries going to get together to tackle the really critical issues facing the world? The one that's the most important is how do we deal with the pandemic? We have not conquered this yet. Some countries like China have done much better than others, but there is no level or prospect of easy international travel. That needs to be dealt with. And then obviously is the huge looming issue of climate change. And these are the big issues that we should be focusing on. And dialogue at any level, in any form, like with these four EU ministers, is a critical part that's needed to create the kind of understanding to resolve the very big issues.
Okay, Director Cui, other than the symbolism of these meetings, what do you think have actually been achieved?
I think this meeting itself will deliver messages to the China-Europe relations, not only related to human rights, not only related to the European Parliament and also even CAI itself. Also, we know that recently there are some obstacles or problems between China and Europe, especially between China and the European Union. So I think now it's a very important time for China and the European countries to show the, comprehensive view of the China-Europe relations. And also another achievement we can find out from the joint statement and also press after the meeting, at least two consensus has been reached by all of sides, including China and all of the four European countries try to push forward this CAI certification in both two sides. And secondly, all of the countries agreed that regarding to this relations, especially how to manage the divergences between China and Europe, both sides need to have some more dialogue, communication, not go through by this, confrontation. I think this kind of important consensus will have a, spillover effect to some other European countries. But of course, and have some more economic cooperation, especially in the big data or digital industry or economy, will be, another kind of achievement.
Right. Alistair, let's talk about China-European trade. China-EU trade, for example, grew by 42% to $250 billion from this January to April. In the same period, the EU's actual investment in China increased by 12% to nearly $2 billion. And China's direct investment to the EU went up by 70%. That is, of course, according to China's Ministry of Commerce. How do you look at the link between the strong economic connection and emerging political differences?
I think there's a disconnect in the world between the politics and the economics. There was a good example given in the Financial Times, which is very influential around the world. It was last week. It caught my eye. And what it was making the point is that Wall Street, for all the divisions and tensions between USA and China, Wall Street and investment is piling into China at unprecedented levels. And I think that it's because business people and investors look at the world in a different way from the politicians. They look at how can we make a return? And they can see that the compelling data that China is headed for becoming not only the biggest economy in the world, but by far the largest middle class. And that's where the growth is going to be. So they follow. The problem is that the politicians have voters to listen to and to appeal to. And so the way that the politicians are messaging, both in the US and the EU, are pitching to what they think their core voting base wants to hear. And unfortunately, in Europe and USA, there are quite large sections of the voter base that are worried about China, negative about China. And this comes to the level or how communications and dialogue goes between China and the world. One of the things that I have been repeatedly saying for many years is China has to find different ways of communicating with the rest of the world. How you communicated inside China domestically is very different how you need to communicate outside. So in answer to your question, it doesn't surprise me at all, the data about trade expanding between EU and China EU, and with the US. What we have to deal with is this problem of politics and political communication, which is causing a great deal of tension. That's why I think there's this disconnect between the politics and the economics. And it explains the data that you read out.
Well, Director Cui, you talked about the fact that somehow the goodwill between China and these four European countries can somehow, extend or find its way into China's relations with other EU countries. How united do you think Europe is right now when it comes to its relations with China?
I think now, especially comparing with the past, indeed, the China-Europe relations become more, complicated. Even it also gets some more, influence from outside, especially from the United States or some other players on the international arena. But I think now for China, the European countries, especially after the finish of negotiation of CAI, after the exchange of sanctions in the area of human rights, for both sides need to try to calm down and to find out maybe a sustainable model for, communication and also for the even negotiation and to manage the divergences. So I think this time, and also this time would be a starting point for both sides to continue also to renew this dialogue and communication, and then try to expand its effect to some other member states and even for the European Union institution. So finally, I think that for both China and the European side, they will try to find out a more, dynamic from the own, not only from, the force or press or pressure from outside.
Alistair, Europe has been talking about strategic
Can I just pick up one point there?
Go ahead.
I absolutely, totally agree with the Director Cui. What we need to do is to focus on what we agree upon, not with what we disagree upon. And this is hugely important between EU and China. There are many more points in EU of agreement and understanding there are between US and China. And that I totally agree with Director Cui, being very wise and say, let's focus on the issues that we agree upon. One of the core ones, this climate change. There's a huge amount of common agreement there. And not try and get distracted by the things we disagree about.
All right, gentlemen, fascinating discussions. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you, Alistair Michie from the Center for China and Globalization, and Director Cui Hongjian from the China Institute of International Studies. Thank you both so very much for your insight.